Recording in progress. All right. So we're going to have closed captioning too, so that's fine. All right, so everybody can see FY23 unit mitigation process overview, correct?
Yep.
In the affirmative?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Correct.
All right, so this is going to be a quick overview of the mitigation process. I really kind of wanted to go over the new NPA for 24 as well, seeing as CRDO leaked it anyway. I will take questions on that. I can't give you anything official. It has not been blessed. So I'll talk about it in the abstract, but I'm not going to give any details beyond what you've already seen. But I'm happy to answer questions at the end of it on where we are with FY24. But this is for mitigation for 23. We're going to talk about the process a little bit. We're going to talk about the reason for it, what is a mitigation, what isn't, how to file one, what the appeal process is, and honestly how difficult they are to prove. I then also have a spreadsheet that I remodified again this afternoon that I will show you at the end or towards the end of the presentation here. And that's really your best tool to decide whether or not to file or to prove that you file. The first thing I have to stress is you can't wake up in October and decide you have mitigating factors for the whole year. You have to have at least tried at your mid-year to identify what the mitigating factor was, and you have to have tried to mitigate it in some way. I had somebody contact me today, for instance, about Amazon hours that were missing. They've been an Amazon site for over a year. And I told them, I said, I'm happy to try and fight that fight because you should have those hours. They shouldn't give you work that they don't fund. But if this is the first time we're bringing it up, it's going to be a hard one to win. So I'll probably go through the presentation and then wait for questions at the end. So first screen I wanted to show you is, see, now I'm going to have to let her in. Okay. Right. When I go into display mode, it doesn't let me access. Maybe I can do it here. I'm sorry, getting distracted. Okay, so these improvements have been here for a while. This is the 4th year, I think, that we've been able to do mitigations inside of PES. And what we found before was people would do written mitigations. They would go to the first level of review, and then they would just sit there. And we didn't know whether they got touched or not. We never got a denial back. So now it's all inside PES. So there should be transparency at all levels. You should be able to see what the unit's doing, what the district's doing, what the area's doing. And then if it gets approved to the area, what the indicator sponsors, and then what the NPA office are doing with your mitigation. There are email notifications at every level, and the evaluators have to comment so we can keep track of what the progress is with mitigation. It extends the field review process, so we'll talk about timelines. I have the current timelines for FY23. If the September numbers post when they should, these dates will be good. They may modify them. If they do, I will message that out. They never get worse. They only ever get better. So what I mean by that is if there is it didn't happen this year, but one year we had a hurricane in September and they mitigated the hurricane, meant we didn't get our final scorecard until almost into November. So they extended all the time. So they extend them. So usually it's 5 days at each level, but we'll get to that in a little bit. You can resubmit directly to the area. If the district denies it, you can resubmit to the area. The area VP is still reviewing these. I'm going to talk almost exclusively CRDO for a couple of reasons. That's what I know. And a good 60 to 70% of our members are in CRDO plus. If you're not, I'm probably more than that, pretty close to 80. If you're not in CRDO, the process is similar. You just appeal to different people. But I'm going to talk exclusively about CRDO, like I say, because that's what I know. The indicator sponsor has to review and validate as well. So, what is a mitigating factor? Mitigating factor is an incident caused a negative result in one or more indicators. So initially, it was something like one year I had my scissor lift go out, and it was a $20,000 ding to my finance number that wasn't funded, beyond my control. It's something that possibly could be roofs blowing off buildings, tornadoes blowing buildings down, having to coop from one office to another is how it started. Now mitigation has sort of expanded now a little bit to other things that are outside of control. A little editorial here. As they've taken more and more control away from us as unit installation heads, the idea that the 6 to 9 play, for instance, was outside our control. We couldn't get away from it, and yet it cost hours that we weren't funded for. We tried to mitigate that last year. We've had varying levels of success with that one, to be honest. It has not already been mitigated in NPA. For instance, 2023, I have it under good authority that the S&DCs, both the gaining and losing offices, we will pre-mitigate those offices. It's going to be next to impossible to get good data for those offices, so we will pre-mitigate those offices. Those offices then will not be able to file for individual mitigation. And that may seem unfair if they don't like what we end up consulting with and giving them a number, but you got to understand the most you can move yourself in mitigation is 1 cell. So if they're all sitting in a 0, the best they can mitigate to would be a 1 individually. It's better for us to mitigate that as a unit, as an association. Now, having said that, there are other mitigations that happen. Scorecards are adjusted that are mitigation. So if that has happened and you've already mitigated this issue, you can't re-mitigate at the end of the year. It has to negatively affect the NPA composite summary score by at least 1 whole cell. We will talk a lot about that when we get there. Just because it moves you in F2 DPH percent to SPLY, moves you a cell or 2 or 3, doesn't necessarily mean it moves you an overall cell. So it has to move whatever happened that was beyond your control. Has to move your composite score by at least 1 whole cell. It's beyond your control. That's that's usually fairly easy to prove, whether it's in your control or not. But the thing is, you have to have made some effort to offset the occurrence. So, like I said, with the hours discrepancy for an Amazon site, if we haven't brought that to anybody's attention, if we waited to the end of the year, if we didn't, at least try and mitigate that during the course of the year, it's harder to win a mitigation at the end of the year. And that the NPA composite summary score results in a lower PFP rating. So one of those two go hand in hand. The unit installation head is the one that files. So if you're in a plant, it's plant manager. If you're pretty much everywhere else, it's postmaster. That then goes to the district manager. It's the chief pieces in the district, which is still the district manager, even in the reorg. And they either approve or disapprove. Binary. Do I approve this mitigation or do I not? If they don't, I see varying degrees of thoroughness and thoughtfulness with these. Disapproved and no reason why I disapproved it. For some reason, district managers aren't, they're not creatures that want to approve mitigation, even if they, the facts are sitting in front of them that it should be mitigated. If it gets disapproved at the DM level, you can, as the installation head, submit it directly to the area. Almost exclusively last year, we saw areas concur with districts when that happened, usually without any other comment. We just concur with the district. At that point, there's no further appeal. that's where we take over. We file a constitutive issue log on it, take it to headquarters, and try and fight for it. Again, to varying degrees of satisfaction. If it is approved at the district and at the going to the area, it goes to the area for recommendation. The AVP approves it. If it disapproved, no further appeal, like I said. If it is approved, it goes to the indicator sponsor. So when Dan and I are in the room for NPA each year, all the sponsors of each indicator from every functional, there's somebody from CRDO there, there's somebody from transportation, there's somebody from the law department, there's somebody from labor, there's everybody that has a scorecard. There's a group there, and inside that group there are indicator sponsors. So somebody from CRDO owns F2 DPH, percent to supply, for instance. So if that's what we're mitigating and saying, hey, this number doesn't seem right, or whatever the thing is, it will then go to them to have them review and validate. And then it finally goes to the NPA team. The NPA team does not make any judgment calls one way or the other. They just verify the data, and then they'll publish a new scorecard. So as you go through the mitigation process, installation has a questionnaire. You have to upload documentation. You have to review it. So the documentation that you have, again, it should be a yearly thing. If you know at the beginning of the year something is occurring in your office that is going to cause a mitigation, you need to start documenting it there. You need to start keeping all your paperwork. You need to start with a spreadsheet. However you're documenting the negative effect your NPA. The lead pieces, so your district executive, your district manager will review and then upload any additional information and approve or disapprove. I've never seen them upload any additional documentation. I've only ever seen them, I was about to say disapprove. I've seen some get approved at the district level. I have. But I've never seen them add any additional documentation. Similarly, at the area, area goes to area HR and then to the area vice president. It really just goes to the area vice president, and they bring HR in to help. Again, I've never seen any additional documentation uploaded at that point. It's just a simple approve or disapprove. And then again, the same thing happens at the headquarters level. So this is the process. These screenshots are a couple years old. So if it's different now inside PAS, it's going to be similar to this. You find your unit mitigation process. Installation head questions. There's been no changes to this. What was the significant occurrence? When did it occur? How was it beyond your control? What actions did you take to offset the effects of this event? And describe the trends of the unit indicator prior to the occurrence. So I was not an Amazon site for the first 6 months of the year. Then I'd start delivering Sunday Amazon. I told my boss about it at mid-year. I tried to save hours on Saturday, tried to lower the overtime by pivoting people out, borrowing people, whatever it is we did to try and mitigate it. But at the end of the year, with no funding in that, this is how many hours I used that were not funded. And this would have moved me, whatever the indicator is. Attach any supporting documents along with the NPA report card in a PDF file only. So the best way to do it is to have one big PDF with everything on there, because you're uploading your documentation as a PDF file. You can make anything. You can make a Excel spreadsheet into a PDF file. You can make obviously a Word document into a PDF file. So have all that stuff, and you want to put your year-end scorecard in there. The best ones, the best mitigations we see are the ones that have, 3 or 4. Every quarter there's a NPA scorecard. There's a scorecard in January that shows whether we noticed the problem. There's another one in April where we realized we were really in trouble. There's notifications. There's the conversation you had within PES with your boss at the mid-year that, hey, this is going to be an issue at the end of the year for NPA, and this is what we did try to do about it. So you do all that on this page, and you submit the request. Now you can only view after that. So you've This is one that you've already submitted, so now you can only view as it goes through the system. What the achieved value was right here, the suggested value, and it goes on through. So the questions, have you verified that the NPA indicator is one that has not already been mitigated? So that's a verification. Have you verified the correct NPA unit indicator is identified? So we say it's DPH percent to supply because I now have all these deliveries on Sunday that I didn't have before that I get no extra credit for. So my DPH went up, and it wouldn't have gone up. It wouldn't have moved me out of that cell because I didn't have these deliveries. Make sure that's that's the indicator that you're putting on. You're not saying, well, my TOE, although it could affect TOE as well, that you're specifying that the mitigating factor directly affected the indicator that you wanted. Is it a negative result in one or more of indicators? So it could be in more than one indicator. We only have those unit indicators. You can mitigate up to the district level. It's very hard to prove. You have the two that in CRDO that we mitigate the most are DPH percent to supply and CSV SOV. Those two are the ones, and we kind of already mitigated the CSV SOV with not getting an average, getting one or the other. So if there's a transfer issue, if there's a finance number issue, if there's a somebody got cooped into your office and you got way more clerk hours than you normally have, and none of that's funded. Does the documentation support the claim? Just simply saying, hey, October, November, December, January, February, March, April, I was in a cell 6, and then next month I'm in a cell 5. And by the end of the year, I'm in a cell 4. I want the cell 6. Saying that's nice, but it's not a mitigating factor. There has to be something that happened beyond your control that you can actually point to as a mitigating factor to say that your NPA was unfairly affected. Just the fact that you're on a downward trend isn't necessarily, it could be a symptom, but it's not necessarily the underlying mitigating thing. Was it beyond your control? Did you have any control over it? Did the unit make any efforts to offset the occurrence? Those are fairly straightforward. Was the impact of the occurrence enough to cause a downward change? Again, this is all the questions we've asked before. Have you verified that the score, cell value, and end results of the NPA report card are accurate? So that's the first thing we do when it gets up to our level. Did it actually move you where it's moved you? A lot of them stop at that point because that's not actually what happened. I say a lot, about 50% of them. Have you verified the overall performance rating from PAS will be lowered by at least one cell? So it's all the things that we need to make sure the answer to all those is the right answer by doing our due diligence up front. So those are all those questions right here. He will then either approve, he or she will then either approve or disapprove, and there should be some comments in here. I see these all the time with no comments. Especially if there's a disapprove, there needs to be comments in there. They then save and submit. It goes to the area. They make a recommendation. It then goes to the vice president, and they again approve or disapprove. All of this is the stuff that you would have put in underneath. Would be the items you can see. Again, you will be able to see this, but it's going to be read only, and they will say whether they recommend it or didn't recommend it. Very often here, especially if it's a disapproval at the district and we submitted it to the area, they will just, I think they copy and paste. We concur with the determination of the district. Unfortunately, I don't see them putting a lot of time into some of these, so that's why we have to. If we have a good case, we need to make sure we put good time into it. Then it goes up to the indicator, and they will actually do the math and say this is the achieved value. This is what the suggested value should be. Is it right? Is it validated by the documentation? Would that be where they would have fell if that occurrence hadn't happened? And then they have to put at least 150 characters in here. If either way, whether it's validated or not. I'm yet to see one of these because we haven't got to that level on anything that I've been dealing with yet. Then it goes to the NPA team and they do a similar sort of thing. They then verify the suggested value. Is it going to make it? Is it going to change? And then I believe inside here, it actually goes to PAS and the changes will be made. The problem we have now, because we're already in the new year, if any of the mitigations from 22, as and when they're approved, they're going to have to go back and cut 50s and make people whole from the beginning of this calendar year. So that money's in their base for any NPA they get next calendar year based on their September 30 salary. Lots of things going on in the post office, and they just keep pushing the ball down the road. They don't deny any of these yet. They drag their feet. Some of them take years to get figured out. So here's your dates. This is solid, like I say, if the September scorecards drop when they're supposed to. The installation heads first date is November 13th, and you have 5 days. So that week, the 13th to the 17th, that is going to be your week. You should not start this process on November 16th and expect to get it finished. If you think you've got a mitigation, you should be working on it now. You know what your August scores were, your September scores aren't going to change that much, I wouldn't think. And if they do change and you're better off, you don't need to mitigate. But you should be gathering your information. You should already have your dates when you try to mitigate it during the year. You should already have your mid-year where you talk to your boss about it, or at least brought it up. If it's something that happened after mid-year, that we've at least tried to mitigate it by saying, hey, where are these hours? How are we going to fund the Amazon or whatever the situation is? So then that's over on the 17th. The lead pieces, and this is the part that annoys me. The lead pieces, so your district manager has to review, approve, and disapprove Saturday, November 18th through Wednesday, November 22nd, which is the day before Thanksgiving. So really, they're not going to work Saturday and Sunday, probably. Monday's Monday. So they got Tuesday, basically, to look at these. And that's a bad system. We're going to try and get that fixed. But it's what we're stuck with here. So if they extend the timelines, I don't think that they will this year. I think we should be good to go. But that's something we need to look at. So then if it's disapproved, at that point, you have from the Thursday through Monday, November 27th, to resubmit it to the area. Again, you're talking about holidays, you're talking about weekends. So you need to be ready. You need to know if it's coming, as and when it comes back. Then it goes to the executive manager. They get 5 days, and the area VP gets 6 days. So they actually get 11 days at the area. If they deny it, the book says that's it. If it gets denied at area, whether it's denied or approved at district, whether it's appealed or approved, up to the area manager, whatever the AVP says, it's over. That's when we take it if they have value. That's when chapter presidents have to look at their chapter members' mitigations, decide if they think it's got value, and then send it straight to me and Dan at headquarters. If it gets approved at the area, the NPA team has 4 days to act, and then the mitigation posting date is December 12th of 2023. Things to remember. Unit installation head is defined by an occupation code. So if you're a postmaster, that if your occupation code, if you are a supervisor acting as an OIC, you are acting in that installation. If you got a 1723 on file, you can file. It'll be harder because you have to have access to PAS. Comments are required at every level. So they say they're required. I see them come back all the time, especially denials with very little comments. All recommendations, approvals, and comments are visible to all on the approval chain, so be careful what you write. Unit mitigation approval process is determined based on PAS end-of-year approval chain. So whoever your approver is in PAS, usually your POOM if you're a postmaster, and then your district manager, area vice president. Area district PAS coordinator will provide training material. Okay. To area district PFP eligible employees. I don't know how much NPA training was out there. I know most of the stuff I learned about NPA, I learned in rooms like this, not the Postal Service rooms. For assistance, contact your area or district PES coordinator. You can actually also you can contact NPA directly. I see people do that all the time to ask questions. Generally, again, NPA is not an arbiter one way or another. They will just give you their opinion. The most common thing I see is there's a situation going on in my office, and the installation head explains to the NPA team what's going on. The NPA team responds, yeah, if that's what's going on, that's probably should be mitigatable. And that encourages people to mitigate, whether or not they don't look at any data or say that it's a good case or not. They just sort of encourage it. So let me look here. All right, so this, I'm going to start sharing my screen again here in a minute. This, can everybody see a spreadsheet now? I'm guessing.
Yes.
Okay. So this is, it's a little busy, but this is directly from, and this is actually Lincoln's, so my office, Lincoln, Illinois, 164476. This is a recreation of my August FY23 year-to-date and national performance assessment. So my NPA scorecard. This is an actual number right down here, 3.42. These are the goals. So on the right here, this is the goal for, so for instance, for controllable income, the goal is 0.5, the goal is 0.5. For total FPR to plan, it's 0 and on down here. This, you will see varying, you guys may have seen these come out. I send them out a lot at the beginning of the year. These are your targets and thresholds for the 9 national indicators, for want of a better word. And then obviously, like I said, retail and delivery. This is the 10th one. These are the weights and depths. So depending on what level office you're in, it depends on how far down they reach. Most of our offices 18s, 21 to 20 and 22. These are most of our offices. So for instance, if you're in a 22 office and you're talking about DPH, any office, level office, you're talking about DPH percent to supply, it's at the lead finance number. So right here, you know that you own the lead finance. You have full control over that, is their verbiage. The employee separation rate is at the district level for everybody all the time. There's good and bad to that. If you don't have a lot of separations and then you have one in a smaller office, it can destroy us. So they do it on the district, but of course we're not keeping anybody. So this separation rate is terrible for everybody. So this is basically, I put these two together. So I'm going to walk you through how they actually get a scorecard, because this is a number we need to move. So I'm in a 3.42, which puts me in a cell 3. I say this is Lincoln's NPA. Obviously doesn't affect me this year, but what if I was there? So I'm going to say it's mine. So 3.42 rounds down to a 3. A 3.5 rounds up to a 4. So there's some, if I was looking at this during the year, I would want to look and say, okay, where are we? So here's stuff we don't have control over. Controllable income, FPR percent to plan, total operating expense percent to plan, which is a level 20 and above indicator. It's work hours to plan for 18s. So that number is a little different if you're in an 18. The market dominant, competitive composite, scanning visibility, all the customer experience, all of those are pretty much set. Employee availability, they've done great. Now here's the thing with employee things that I don't understand. Employee availability, the score, my target is 92.52 with a 96.12, which is a 10. Our goal is to improve by 0.5%. We grew by 0.7, but it's still a cell 5. So it didn't get me into a cell 6. So my employee availability average somehow is a 10. So I don't think that's an average. And this is off my scorecard. So I'm not going to mitigate that because it's helping me. But the separation rate, we're in a cell 0. Grievances, again, it's an average. So this employee utilization is a combination of all of these. So I end up in a cell 5. It's 13% of my score, which gives me 6.5. So you see the one with a 9% weighting, and all these weightings are new this year, and they're going to be different again next year. So if you're using an old spreadsheet, you need to make sure you know what these weightings are. So the 1 gives us 0.09, the 2 at 7 gives us 14. So all of this adds up to 40%. Here's the thing that gets, so this to this level here is 60% of your score in CRDO. So that's, and actually anywhere. We all have different, every functional effect, every function has different functional effectiveness scores. So this is the Lincoln part here. DPH percent to SPLY. The goal was to improve by 0.25. We got worse by negative 1.8. So if you look over here, 0.25, negative 1.8 puts me in a cell 3. So I'm a cell 3. CSV to variance. So this is actually my variance to 100. So the goal is 95. The clerks in Lincoln, the management in Lincoln, managed to achieve 93.59. So that puts them in a cell 4. And their CSV opportunity to SPLY is a negative 99. So when you start getting close to 100 up here, a small movement, so I don't know what they were at last year, but I'm guessing it was somewhere in the same ballpark. But they've got a horrendous disimprovement. They've lost a lot to SPLY. Probably an hours change, probably not putting hours in the right place last year. They did really well last year. They've actually got it right this year. So that could hurt you. Fortunately, you get the higher of those two scores. So they actually going to get rated on their CSV SOV variance, which is a 4. And then employee separation for CRDO. So this is a district score. The goal was to be at a negative 6 on employee separations. And like almost everybody in the country, we're dead in the water there. So if you look over here, this has to be broken out just a little bit differently. DPH percent to SPLY is 50% of your score. So that 3 we achieved there gives me 1.5. The 4 that we got scored on there at 30% gives me 1.2. And then this one is 20%, gives me nothing. So this is my 2.7. That is actually my unit score. That rounds up to a 3. So a 3 goes in there. So you get a little bit of bump with the integer. So 40% of 3 is 1.2. You add 1.2 to what the national score is. So there's 3.2. The reason I show you this is, let's say we're mitigating DPH percent to SPLY. We achieved minus 1.8. Say we had actually achieved 0.25, and that was a 5. We're going to change that, and then I'm going to bold it. So I remember to change it. Remember that I changed it. So we're going to say, we're going to have the documentation during the year saying, hey, we got all these deliveries. We didn't get credit for the deliveries. AMS was slow putting them in we got this massive growth. We had to add a route. It's not that we told them at the beginning of the year, the AMS wasn't rolling into Flash, wasn't rolling into where NPA calculates it. We prove it. We say, okay, we would have got a 0.25 had we have done that. We do the math and we have that. If you see that now moves this number, remember it was a 2.7 to 3.7, which changes that now to a 4. And now the mitigated numbers are in bold. I now move from a cell 3 to a cell 4. That is a mitigating factor. It's something that happened beyond my control. I did all the AMS books. I sent them all up. I did the work. We made the deliveries. It cost us more hours, but I didn't get credit for DPH deliveries per hour because my deliveries went up. My deliveries didn't go up, but my hours did. So I got hurt. That's a made up reason, but let's just say that's what it is. This is the math you have to do before you even start mitigating, because it's quite possible. Let's say that this goes to a 4 instead of a 5. Now this is still a 3, and I still didn't move a box. Even though I got a higher score here than the 3 I started with, it didn't move me a whole cell. And that's the number one thing we look at when these come up to headquarters, and it should be the thing you're looking at before you waste your time mitigating. Is do the math, do the scores. The thing that I'm mitigating, does it actually move me a cell? One of my favorite examples of this, something that's beyond your control. I'm going to stop sharing the screen now. Something that's beyond your control. For instance, you're in a rural area. You've got farmers that are your rural routers. They're all on H routes. They all have subs. They all get to use LWAP on Saturday if they have a sub. That's in their contract. Nothing you can do about it. They don't need to use leave. You have to pay them LWAP, and obviously that affects your employee availability. We had an office 104 days. 104 days, so 52 weeks. Both their carriers were off every Saturday to work their subs on H routes. It didn't move them a cell. When we calculated the employee availability difference, it didn't move a cell. It was close, but it didn't. So it's important to look at what you're mitigating and the result of it. So that's pretty much all I have. Does anybody have any questions? I see a couple in the chat that I'll get to here in a minute, but does anybody have any questions they want to cover that I will try and answer?
Then, Mr. Jim Young, I'm from Williamsport, SNDC. I heard you mention it earlier about doing something for the SNDCs, but mine was in June when I was converted. And my biggest impact is it changed my finance number.
Right.
So I'm completely dropped now.
Correct.
So when I go in my NPA, it shows my old finance number.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, there's no way you can work within the PES system and get an NPA this year, Jim.
Okay.
They just don't have a capability of doing it. I'm working with Don Flack on that. And we just have to come up with a reasonable solution.
Okay. So do I still mitigate or don't I mitigate?
I mean, here's the thing. What's your overall score now? 0?
Oh, pretty close. It went from almost a 5 down to a 0.
You go to a 1. It doesn't help you at all. So that's what we call a known issue. Don's pretty good with that stuff. He's already working on the numbers, and they're gonna. I mean, it's the major thing is it's not just going to affect you this year; it's going to affect you next year too. Because next year, your DPH to supply is going to be based on what? This year,
nothing.
Right. So it's not just and it's going to be an ongoing thing as we do these for the next 8-9 years. So I think we're going to come up with a global agreement on how we treat NPA for the SNDCs. I just don't know what that looks like yet. But I don't even know that you'd have the ability to mitigate it. You're just going to have to trust that the Postmaster Association is already on top of that for you. And we should get that done. I'm going to put a time frame on it to have it done by that December 7th or December 4th date that they said. So at least you guys know where you are.
Okay. Will our president let us know? Would they put something out for us or?
Sure. That'll be, we'll send that out. I'll talk to the area vice presidents and the district managers and our VPs and chapter presidents to make sure that comes out. I'd like to say the post office would do it, but I'm sure they won't.
Yeah. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, no problem. Any other questions?
I got a question.
You don't get a question.
Oh, come on.
Right,
the 2024 supporting documentation that we see like on that, left-hand side of NPA. When do they expect 23? That will be? Well, 23 is there now, but when do they expect 24 will be starting to show up there?
You're talking about goals for 24?
Well, like all that supporting documentation, like where you can click on it and it takes you to the weights and, like everything you were showing us with your
Right. So
thing.
they haven't actually officially been approved by the Board of Governors yet. So when that is, and then they will take those, they'll take 23 down and they'll put 24 up.
And when do you think that usually happens? Like when the
Usually it doesn't happen until the new year.
new year? Okay.
Last year we got it in November 1st, which was the earliest we've ever gotten it. I was hoping to get it. I mean, they have it. I've seen it. We just haven't got the official blessing from on high yet.
Thank you.
So, pretty quick here. Now, I will tell you this, the indicators, DPH percent to supply will still be there. CSV, SOV percent to supply will still be there. They're going to add a scanning at the local level. So they're going to compare ADEs to, AAUs to ADEs based on the equipment in the office. So we always had a problem with like duoed offices because scanning zip code specific, right? So if you don't deliver, you don't have the city delivery for your zip code, it goes somewhere else, but you have the PO box for your zip code. You got rated on whatever the delivery unit was doing. You didn't get rated on what you were doing in your unit. They're now changing the way they're measuring that. I'm yet to see definitive proof of it, but they're changing the way they're doing it. And they're saying, okay, well, we can go down to the machine. We know the pass machine. We know the DSS machine. We know the scanners that the clerks are using. We can assign those to finance numbers. And then we can take those AAUs and compare them against the ADEs in that unit based on location rather than based on zip code. So, we were pretty strict. We were pretty strict about this, back in April and May when we were having these meetings. They're going to measure a lot more stuff at that local level because it's not going to be 50% of your score. So, there's going to be 5, I think maybe 6 indicators, and the functional effectiveness, and they'll each be, between 5 and 20% of your 50%. So I said, you can't put anything in there that isn't measurable at the low. You can't put a district number in there. You need to move employee retention up to the national level because you can't measure employee separations at the local level. So it's going to be a lot of change this year. So we need to get it out quickly. But overall, it should give you more control over what NPA score you have. You'll be less dependent on the national number.
Yeah, the scanning one actually impacts a lot of us in New Jersey because we had a lot of duos that happened 10 years ago. So we still to this day can't get, if you try to look us up on scanning, you can't find us.
So infuriating. I'm telling them we can't have scanning. I'm telling CRD we can't have scanning because you can't do it to unit. You can't do it. And they don't know. So they bring in one of the IT guys and he's a scanning guy. And he says, sure, I can just make, and they ran some tests and Dom Flack tells me, and I trust him. He knows his stuff when it comes to measuring NPA stuff. He says they can identify what machines are attached to what finance number, what packages come across there in the morning as AAUs, and whether or not they got delivered that day. And I said, well, couldn't we have been doing this all along? All these mitigations we had for all these years with those duo offices? Well, yeah, we could have been. But nobody ever asked. Or nobody thought to run it that way. And the only reason we did it is because they wanted this last mile. They wanted to measure, there's only so many things you can measure in a delivery unit, right? Clerk hours to plan is terrible. I don't like CSV, but it's to supply. So if it was terrible last year, it shouldn't be any less terrible this year. So you're comparing to yourself. DPH, that's what we do. You got to measure delivery. What's really left in a delivery unit? It's got to be the scanning part, but the scanning was always before when it was based on zip code, it was really complicated. You have more than one zip code in some delivery units. You had split zip code. I mean, it just got crazy. But now if you can say, hey, this office has this many DSS, pass, clerk scanners, and they scan 10,000 packages, how many of those 10,000 got delivered the same day? And it puts the onus on us to make sure that, when we're clearing that end of day at the end of the night, that's going to directly affect our NPA. rather than, well, I don't really have any control over it. It's in somebody else's office. So that'll be a big change for 24. Not really the subject of this class, but good information nonetheless. Are there any other questions? So if an office had EAS carrying a significant amount last year and now they have staffing, so the DPH is greatly affected, would that be a case for mitigation? So that's you, Patrick. I'm assuming that EAS didn't transfer the hours last year. If they transfer the hours last year, it shouldn't make any difference to DPH.
The rural office, you can't always transfer the hours. You put it in there, but it doesn't. It's transfer LTATs of 2,500 gets screwy.
Okay. Well, yeah, as long as you transfer the hours, and that's what the problem with the mitigation is, you could argue, hey, the same hours are being used. It's just because we measured them now differently. But you could try, because it's beyond your control, right? You had to carry them last year. You couldn't transfer them successfully. You weren't there. Let's say you came to an office that had a bunch of ES carrying, they didn't transfer the hours. You could make that argument that your DPH was suffering because you have many more. You don't really have more hours. It just looks like you have more hours, right?
Right.
You could make my problem is I can clutch at straws and pretty much make anything sound like it's mitigatable. Would we win that one? That's hard to say. I mean, it's also hard for the service to say, listen, we don't want to give you the raise that you deserve because of an accounting issue, right? So you'd have to prove it. You'd have to also say, hey, we've known about this all year. We've tried to mitigate it. We've reduced the actual overall hours. That's always the best case scenario, right? That you've used less hours this year than last year. So that proves you tried to overcome the issue. You just failed. And so, yeah, it's mitigatable. Any other questions?
I believe Scott asked about sending that spreadsheet out. Are you going to make that available on the website, or are you going to email it out?
I will do this. You guys email me and I'll email you individual copies. I don't really want to broadcast that one. Because here's what I will tell you. None of it's protected. I mean, none of the information is proprietary or anything, but if you start messing with the formulas and stuff, it's only as good as the person that's using it in Excel. I haven't made it very user friendly. But if you shoot me an email, I'll send you the spreadsheet. The deck will be available to anybody. I think part of it may already be on. I'll just put the 23 on there. Not that much changed. Any other questions? All right. I appreciate your time. I don't see that Nicole's on here from FESA. She sponsors these meetings. Nicole, you on here? Are the Astros playing? The Astros must be playing. All right.
The Astros are playing. It's a tie game. So
yeah. Okay. So that's where she is. We thank her for her support and making these things possible. So, unless there's anything else, I will let everybody go. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you.
thank you, Evan.